There are stories that echo through time, tales of brilliance, triumph, and tragedy woven into the very fabric of our shared culture. Tonight, we explore one such story, the life of a man who sang for the world, who danced his way into hearts across the globe, yet, in the quiet moments, faced a solitude that few could imagine. This is the story of Michael Jackson, Amy Winehouse, and Kurt Cobain, icons whose voices transcended generations, but whose lives ended far too soon, marked by shadows hidden behind the spotlight. As you settle in and let the calm of the night carry you through this journey, I invite you to become part of this shared moment. If you appreciate the story, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Your support helps keep these stories alive. And I'm curious, where in the world are you listening right now? What hour has found you? Share in the comments, so we can connect across time zones and stories. Now, with the night as our companion, let us begin the tale, a slow, deliberate journey into the life of a boy who became the king of pop, yet was never just a king. This is Michael Jackson's early life and the rise of a child prodigy. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana, a small industrial city etched into the American Midwest. He was the eighth of 10 children in the Jackson family, a household that, at first glance, seemed like many others of its time, full of noise, chaos, and the familiar rhythms of family life. But beneath that ordinary surface was a story waiting to unfold, one that would soon reshape music history forever. From an early age, Michael displayed a rare spark, a magnetic presence that drew the eyes of those around him. Yet, this spark was kindled in the shadow of a strict and demanding father, Joseph Jackson, whose drive to see his children succeed was relentless. Joseph's vision was clear. He believed that with discipline and hard work, the Jackson family could rise above their modest beginnings. By the time Michael was just 4 years old, he was already standing on stage with his older brothers in what would become the Jackson 5. It was a group formed not just by blood, but by ambition, sweat, and the pressure of dreams too large for their small hometown. Their performances, polished beyond their years, combined tight harmonies, youthful energy, and a sense of showmanship that hinted at the greatness to come. Michael's voice, even in those earliest days, stood out, a high, clear tone that could captivate audiences and convey emotions far beyond his years. But it was not only his voice that made him special, it was the way he moved, his uncanny ability to tell a story with every gesture, every step, every glance. The boy who once danced shyly in his family living room was becoming a prodigy in the truest sense. By 1969, when the Jackson 5 signed with Motown Records, the world began to take notice. Their debut single, "I Want You Back," exploded onto the charts, shooting to number 1 and introducing Michael as a child star destined for unprecedented fame. For a child still attending school and navigating the complexities of growing up, the spotlight was both a gift and a burden. The Motown machine honed the group's sound and image, turning Michael into a polished performer. Yet behind the curtain of success was a young boy thrust into the adult world of the music industry, a world filled with rigorous rehearsals, demanding schedules, and expectations that left little room for childhood innocence. Throughout this time, Michael's voice matured, but his spirit retained a youthful curiosity and a hunger to explore. He absorbed influences from the greats, James Brown's energy, Fred Astaire's grace, and the soulful depth of Marvin Gaye. Each inspiration layered onto the foundation of raw talent that was already unmistakable. But the life of a child star is never simple. The pressures of fame collided with the natural challenges of adolescence, shaping Michael's world in complex ways. The adoration of millions was a dazzling light, but it also cast long shadows, of isolation, of longing, and of a profound desire to belong somewhere beyond the stage. And so, the boy from Gary, Indiana, propelled by raw talent and relentless determination, was on a path that would lead him far beyond the expectations of any child, becoming a global icon whose music would change the world forever. There's a kind of magic that can only be found in the earliest chapters of a great artist's story, before the lights became too bright, before the fame became too heavy. Michael Jackson's journey didn't begin on the global stage, but in a modest home in Gary, Indiana. He was the youngest of 5 brothers, and from the start, there was something different about him, an energy, a spark. By the time he was just 6 years old, he was not only keeping up with his older siblings, but outshining them. The Jackson 5, as the group would come to be known, was a family act built on talent, rhythm, and drive. But even within that tight unit, Michael's natural charisma was undeniable. Motown Records, the legendary label that helped shape the sound of a generation, saw it immediately. When Berry Gordy signed the Jackson 5 in 1968, he didn't just see a talented group, he saw a vehicle for greatness. And at the center of it was a child who moved and sang with a kind of grace well beyond his years. The Jackson 5's early hits, "I Want You Back, ABC, The Love You Save," and "I'll Be There," weren't just catchy pop songs. They were cultural moments, delivered by a group of teenagers, and one preteen, who brought color, energy, and youth to the Motown sound. But the records only told half the story. It was their live performances that truly set them apart. Michael, even as a child, performed with astonishing precision. Every spin, every note, every gesture was honed through tireless rehearsal. Under Motown's famously strict artist development program, the Jackson 5 were trained not just to sing and dance, but to command a stage. The discipline was intense. Long hours, endless choreography, vocal coaching, interviews, photo shoots. For a child, it was a lot. But Michael didn't just endure it, he absorbed it. He learned how to control a room, how to read an audience, how to make people feel something just by tilting his head or pausing for a beat. In many ways, Motown was Michael's first school, not just of music, but of presentation, of professionalism, of perfection. He watched legends like Diana Ross and Smokey Robinson, absorbing their polish, their poise. He paid close attention in studio sessions, learning not just how to sing, but how to shape sound. And he began to understand something that few children ever even consider, that performance is power. Even then, even in those early days, there was something else, an invisible thread that set Michael apart. It wasn't just talent. It was vision. A quiet understanding, even as a child, that he wasn't meant to stay inside any mold, not even one as golden as Motown's. Motown gave Michael a platform. It gave him exposure, structure, and polish. But it also introduced him to the double-edged nature of the entertainment industry. He saw the pressure, the politics, the business behind the music. And he began, slowly but surely, to dream beyond the frame he'd been given. He was the youngest member of the group, but he quickly became its centerpiece, not by force, but by sheer magnetism. His voice, pure and filled with emotion, had a way of reaching people, young and old, rich and poor, across cultures and countries. In just a few short years, the Jackson 5 went from a family band from Indiana to an international sensation. And at the heart of that whirlwind was a young boy who seemed to carry the weight of destiny on his shoulders, gracefully, almost silently, with a smile that masked the intense discipline beneath. This was the beginning of a transformation. Because while the world was falling in love with a group called the Jackson 5, Michael Jackson was already becoming something else. Something larger. Something timeless. And Motown, for all its history and influence, would be only the first stop on a much longer, more complex journey. a journey toward becoming a cultural icon the world would never forget. There is a quiet cost to growing up in the public eye, especially when that spotlight arrives before childhood even has the chance to unfold. For Michael Jackson, fame came not as a reward for years of adult struggle, but as a constant companion from the moment he could hold a microphone. By the time most children were learning how to ride a bike or make friends at school, Michael was performing on national television, rehearsing choreography for hours, and navigating a world run by contracts, executives, and cameras. To the public, he was a marvel, a prodigy with a voice that could stir hearts and a stage presence that felt magical. But behind the scenes, he was still just a boy who rarely played outside, a boy who spent more time in hotel rooms than classrooms, a boy who, while deeply loved by fans, was often isolated from the simple joys of being young. The discipline required to maintain his role as the frontman of the Jackson 5 was intense. The rehearsals were relentless. The expectations were sky high. Every movement had to be precise, every note on pitch. And for Michael, who already had a perfectionist's heart, the pressure to perform flawlessly became a part of his identity. There was very little room to stumble, very little space to be human. And that kind of pressure, placed on young shoulders, can quietly reshape a person. Michael's father, Joe Jackson, was known for his strict approach to managing the group. He believed in tough love, in pushing his children to be the best. That drive no doubt contributed to their success, but it also came at a cost. In interviews later in life, Michael would describe feeling afraid of disappointing his father. He would speak about the lack of a traditional childhood, how he longed to play, to explore, to feel free. While millions watched him with admiration, what many didn't see was the weight he carried, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the need to be perfect every time the curtain rose. As he entered adolescence, another challenge emerged: identity. Michael was no longer the cherubic child with a sweet smile. He was growing, changing, and entering an age when most people begin to discover who they really are. But for him, that exploration had to happen under scrutiny. Every physical change, every voice shift, every moment of growing up was magnified through the lens of fame. He became increasingly self-conscious, not just about his appearance, but about how the world perceived him. And in the music industry, especially as a young black artist, those perceptions were often shaped by forces outside his control. Critics and fans alike began commenting on everything from his skin to his stage persona, fueling a cycle of public obsession and personal retreat. The world was watching, always watching. And yet, even as the spotlight grew brighter, Michael never lost his connection to music. In fact, it became his refuge, his safe place. The studio was one of the few places where he felt fully in control, where he could express joy, pain, curiosity, and longing without judgment. Music was not just a profession, it was therapy, communication, a lifeline. Still, the emotional toll of those early years lingered. It shaped his understanding of trust. It made relationships more complicated. And it sowed the seeds of the deep yearning he would carry for the rest of his life. The yearning for privacy, for connection, for the kind of love that existed outside of applause. By the time Michael reached his teenage years, he was already a veteran of the entertainment world. But unlike most veterans, he hadn't been hardened by time. He had been molded by pressure. He was both extraordinary and vulnerable, admired, yet often misunderstood. And though the spotlight had elevated him to a place few could ever reach, it had also taken something in return. The boy who danced across stages with effortless charm was growing into a young man. One who had already given so much of himself to the world. And deep down, that light, was beginning to feel too bright. As Michael Jackson transitioned from a gifted child star to a solo artist, the world was about to witness the birth of a legend, one whose impact would stretch far beyond the music charts and into the very fabric of popular culture. This transformation was not sudden but the result of years of careful growth, experimentation, and an unrelenting drive to perfect his craft. And at the heart of this evolution stood one defining moment: Thriller. Released in 1982, Thriller was more than an album. It was a cultural phenomenon. It shattered expectations, broke records, and forever altered what a pop album could be. But to understand the magnitude of Thriller, we must recognize how Michael meticulously crafted his vision, collaborating with industry giants and pushing the boundaries of music, dance, and visual storytelling. Before Thriller, Michael had already tasted solo success with albums like Off the Wall, which showcased his ability to blend pop, funk, and soul with infectious energy. Yet, it was clear he hungered for more, a complete reinvention that would establish him not just as a talented singer, but as the ultimate entertainer. Enter Quincy Jones, the legendary producer whose partnership with Michael became the backbone of Thriller's success. Together, they worked tirelessly in the studio, selecting songs, refining arrangements, and exploring new sonic territories. The result was a record that fused catchy hooks, innovative rhythms, and polished production, creating an album that was both accessible and groundbreaking. Thriller exploded onto the scene with singles that have become timeless classics. Billie Jean, Beat It, and of course, the title track, Thriller. Each song showcased a different facet of Michael's artistry, from his hypnotic vocal delivery to his ability to tell stories that captivated audiences of all ages. But Thriller's impact was about more than just sound. Michael revolutionized the music video format, transforming it into an art form. The music video for Thriller was a short film in itself, complete with elaborate choreography, makeup effects, and a narrative that blurred the lines between music and cinema. It became a cultural event, watched and imitated worldwide, and set new standards for creativity and production value in the industry. The album's success was unprecedented. It topped charts globally, earned numerous awards, including 8 Grammy Awards in a single night, and remains one of the best-selling albums of all time. Michael's image as the King of Pop was solidified, his influence spanning music, fashion, and dance. This period marked the beginning of Michael's reign over the global stage. His performances were electric, combining impeccable technique with an undeniable charisma. The signature moves, the moonwalk, the spins, the dramatic poses, became symbols of a new era in entertainment. Yet, behind this dazzling public persona was a man relentlessly dedicated to his craft, often described as a perfectionist. Hours of rehearsals, countless takes in the studio, and an unyielding quest for excellence were the hidden realities that fueled his spectacular rise. Michael's global fame brought with it immense adoration but also intense scrutiny. As he reached the pinnacle of success, he became a symbol not only of musical innovation but of the complexities of celebrity life, where the spotlight reveals as much as it conceals. Thriller was more than an album. It was the moment Michael Jackson became a cultural icon, a king whose kingdom spanned continents and whose legacy would inspire generations to come. As Michael Jackson transitioned from a gifted child star to a solo artist, the world was about to witness the birth of a legend, one whose impact would stretch far beyond the music charts and into the very fabric of popular culture. This transformation was not sudden but the result of years of careful growth, experimentation, and an unrelenting drive to perfect his craft. And at the heart of this evolution stood one defining moment: Thriller. Released in 1982, Thriller was more than an album. It was a cultural phenomenon. It shattered expectations, broke records, and forever altered what a pop album could be. But to understand the magnitude of Thriller, we must recognize how Michael meticulously crafted his vision, collaborating with industry giants and pushing the boundaries of music, dance, and visual storytelling. Before Thriller, Michael had already tasted solo success with albums like Off the Wall, which showcased his ability to blend pop, funk, and soul with infectious energy. Yet, it was clear he hungered for more, a complete reinvention that would establish him not just as a talented singer, but as the ultimate entertainer. Enter Quincy Jones, the legendary producer whose partnership with Michael became the backbone of Thriller's success. Together, they worked tirelessly in the studio, selecting songs, refining arrangements, and exploring new sonic territories. The result was a record that fused catchy hooks, innovative rhythms, and polished production, creating an album that was both accessible and groundbreaking. Thriller exploded onto the scene with singles that have become timeless classics. Billie Jean, Beat It, and of course, the title track, Thriller. Each song showcased a different facet of Michael's artistry, from his hypnotic vocal delivery to his ability to tell stories that captivated audiences of all ages. But Thriller's impact was about more than just sound. Michael revolutionized the music video format, transforming it into an art form. The music video for Thriller was a short film in itself, complete with elaborate choreography, makeup effects, and a narrative that blurred the lines between music and cinema. It became a cultural event, watched and imitated worldwide, and set new standards for creativity and production value in the industry. The album's success was unprecedented. It topped charts globally, earned numerous awards, including 8 Grammy Awards in a single night, and remains one of the best-selling albums of all time. Michael's image as the King of Pop was solidified, his influence spanning music, fashion, and dance. This period marked the beginning of Michael's reign over the global stage. His performances were electric, combining impeccable technique with an undeniable charisma. The signature moves, the moonwalk, the spins, the dramatic poses, became symbols of a new era in entertainment. Yet, behind this dazzling public persona was a man relentlessly dedicated to his craft, often described as a perfectionist. Hours of rehearsals, countless takes in the studio, and an unyielding quest for excellence were the hidden realities that fueled his spectacular rise. Michael's global fame brought with it immense adoration but also intense scrutiny. As he reached the pinnacle of success, he became a symbol not only of musical innovation but of the complexities of celebrity life, where the spotlight reveals as much as it conceals. Thriller was more than an album. It was the moment Michael Jackson became a cultural icon, a king whose kingdom spanned continents and whose legacy would inspire generations to come. With the dazzling success of Thriller and the unprecedented fame that followed, Michael Jackson found himself living a life few could imagine, a world filled with adoring fans, endless tours, and a relentless spotlight. Yet, beneath the glittering surface lay a complex and often painful reality. The very perfection that made him a global icon also became a heavy burden, shaping his experiences with pressure, isolation, and constant public scrutiny. From a young age, Michael had been no stranger to discipline and high expectations. Growing up in the Jackson family, where talent was nurtured but strictness was the rule, he learned early on that perfection was not just desired, it was demanded. This foundation set the stage for a career where every note, every dance move, and every public appearance had to be flawless. As the king of pop, the stakes only grew higher. Fans expected nothing less than brilliance, and the media eagerly searched for any misstep. Every performance was dissected, every interview analyzed. The pressure to maintain his image, to continually reinvent himself, and to deliver at an extraordinary level was immense. Yet, this perfection came at a personal cost. Michael's relentless work ethic often meant long hours in the studio, rigorous rehearsals, and a constant drive to outdo even his most celebrated achievements. Behind the scenes, many described him as a perfectionist, often revisiting his performances to fine-tune even the smallest details. This drive, however, contributed to a growing sense of isolation. As his fame skyrocketed, the distance between Michael and the rest of the world seemed to widen. The demands of stardom made normal experiences difficult. Simple moments like going out in public or making genuine connections became challenges. The weight of fame created barriers, making it hard for him to trust others fully. Public scrutiny added another layer to his isolation. Michael's appearance evolved over the years, sparking intense speculation and often cruel commentary. Media outlets and gossip columns focused not just on his music, but on his changing looks, personal life, and rumored eccentricities. This relentless attention magnified his vulnerabilities, painting a complex portrait of a man caught between his public persona and private struggles. Moreover, Michael faced relentless rumors and controversies that sometimes overshadowed his artistry. False reports and sensational headlines fueled misunderstandings, creating a cycle where every action was met with suspicion or judgment. The pressure to protect his reputation while staying true to himself became a delicate balancing act. Despite these challenges, Michael continued to pour his heart into his music and performances. His artistry became a refuge, a place where he could express his emotions and connect with millions across the globe. Yet the cost of living up to his own exacting standards and the public's expectations often left him vulnerable. This combination of extraordinary talent and extraordinary pressure reveals a universal truth about fame, that behind the spotlight's glow, there can be profound loneliness. For Michael Jackson, the price of perfection was not just about the physical demands of performance, but the emotional toll of living a life watched and judged by the world. His story reminds us that greatness often comes with sacrifices. Sacrifices unseen by the fans and the public. It is a poignant reminder that the man who danced across stages and rewrote music history also carried the heavy weight of expectations, longing, and the search for acceptance. One of Michael Jackson's most remarkable qualities was his extraordinary ability to reinvent himself, an artist who continuously evolved to remain not just relevant, but revolutionary. Yet, this perpetual transformation came hand in hand with the relentless glare of an ever-watchful public eye, where every change was amplified, analyzed, and judged. From the groundbreaking Off the Wall album through to Bad, Dangerous, and beyond, Michael was never content to rest on his laurels. Each project introduced new sounds, styles, and innovations that pushed the boundaries of pop music and performance art. He wasn't simply creating songs, he was crafting cultural moments, each release a statement that challenged the industry and inspired countless artists around the world. This drive for reinvention was fueled by his insatiable creative spirit. Michael saw himself not only as a singer and dancer but as a visionary entertainer, a storyteller whose music could transcend boundaries of race, language, and geography. His music videos became cinematic masterpieces. The likes of Thriller and Smooth Criminal set new standards for storytelling, choreography, and production value. But with each reinvention came a new set of expectations and pressures. The spotlight that illuminated his career was relentless. There was no pause button, no escape from the constant gaze of fans, critics, and media. Every new look, every shift in musical direction, was met with both admiration and intense scrutiny. Michael's evolving image became a subject of fascination and sometimes controversy. His changing appearance, style choices, and public persona sparked endless media attention, with commentators speculating on everything from his fashion to his personal life. The artist who once was the boy from Gary, Indiana, had become a global icon whose every move was dissected. The never-ending spotlight also meant that Michael's mistakes, struggles, and vulnerabilities were never private. From legal battles to public rumors, his life unfolded in real time for the world to witness. The intense media coverage often blurred the lines between fact and fiction, making it difficult for him to find space for personal healing or privacy. Yet, despite these challenges, Michael's dedication to his craft never wavered. He remained fiercely committed to pushing creative boundaries, whether through innovative stage productions, collaborations with top producers, or exploring new musical genres. His artistry was a constant conversation between his inner world and the global audience that hung on his every note. His final years were marked by plans for what many hoped would be a triumphant comeback, including the highly anticipated This Is It concert series. These preparations reflected not just a return to the stage, but a testament to his enduring passion and commitment to performance. Ultimately, Michael Jackson's story of artistic reinvention is a tale of brilliance intertwined with the burdens of fame. It shows us how an artist can soar to unprecedented heights while grappling with the challenges of living life in the spotlight, where every change invites applause, but also endless scrutiny. His legacy is a powerful reminder that reinvention is both a creative gift and a personal trial. It's about daring to evolve, even when the world watches, waits, and judges without pause. While Michael Jackson's name was synonymous with groundbreaking music and extraordinary talent, his career was also marked by a series of controversies and legal challenges that cast a complex shadow over his legacy. These events unfolded in the glare of global attention, intertwining with his artistry and public persona in ways that were both damaging and deeply human. The most significant and enduring controversies centered around allegations of inappropriate conduct. Beginning in the early 1990s, Michael faced accusations that shook fans and critics alike. These legal battles were intensely public, with every detail scrutinized by the media and dissected in courtrooms. Despite the serious nature of the claims, Michael consistently maintained his innocence, and many of these cases ended in settlements or acquittals, adding layers of complexity to public perception. One of the key challenges during this period was how the media portrayed Michael, sometimes with sensationalism, other times with a tone of relentless suspicion. The press frenzy not only affected his public image, but also took a personal toll. The artist who once sang about innocence and childhood found himself defending his character in the harshest of arenas, where privacy was nearly impossible. These controversies also led to a broader discussion about fame and the way celebrities are treated by the legal system and the public. Michael's trials became cultural moments, exposing the difficult balance between due process and public opinion. For many supporters, the allegations were met with disbelief and fierce defense of the king of pop. For others, they introduced doubt and complicated the way his achievements were viewed. Beyond the allegations, Michael's financial and contractual issues further added to the challenges behind the scenes. Managing an empire as vast as his required navigating complicated business relationships, intellectual property rights, and legal disputes. These matters often played out quietly but were no less significant in shaping the trajectory of his career. Despite these legal and personal storms, Michael's resilience was evident. He continued to produce music, perform, and innovate, even as the world around him was fraught with tension. His ability to maintain artistic output under such pressure speaks to both his dedication and the intensity of the spotlight that followed him. Importantly, the controversies also sparked important conversations about the responsibilities of fame, the vulnerability of artists, and the power dynamics within the entertainment industry. They highlighted how even the most celebrated figures can face profound struggles, reminding us that stardom often comes with a hidden cost. In the end, Michael Jackson's legal battles and controversies are inseparable from the story of his life, a tale of extraordinary highs and painful lows. They reveal the complicated nature of a man who inspired millions but also faced relentless challenges, and they invite us to consider the full spectrum of what it means to live and create under the global spotlight. The final years of Michael Jackson's life were marked by a complex blend of ongoing health challenges and personal struggles that unfolded under the relentless gaze of the public eye. Despite his legendary status and enduring influence on music and culture, these later chapters revealed a more vulnerable and human side to the king of pop, a man grappling with the pressures of fame, physical ailments, and inner turmoil. As the years progressed, Michael's health became a growing concern. Reports emerged of his battles with chronic pain and exhaustion, conditions exacerbated by an intense work schedule and the demands of a life spent in the spotlight. The physical toll of decades of high-energy performances, combined with previous injuries and medical treatments, created a situation that required ongoing management and medical intervention. One of the more widely discussed issues was his dependence on prescription medications, a reality that reflected both the severity of his physical discomfort and the difficulty of maintaining wellness amidst constant stress. These medications were part of an effort to manage pain and anxiety, but they also contributed to a cycle that many described as challenging to control. Beyond the physical health challenges, Michael faced emotional and psychological struggles that further complicated his later years. The isolation that had shadowed much of his life seemed to deepen, with few close confidants and a growing distance from the normal rhythms of everyday life. The loneliness of fame, magnified by legal battles and media scrutiny, weighed heavily on him. Despite these difficulties, Michael continued to focus on his passion, music and performance. His announcement of the This Is It concert residency in London was seen by many as a hopeful new chapter. A chance to return to the stage and reconnect with audiences worldwide. The meticulous preparations for these shows revealed his dedication to excellence and his desire to leave a lasting legacy. Tragically, this comeback was cut short. In June 2009, Michael Jackson passed away unexpectedly, sending shockwaves through the global community. The cause of death was determined to be acute propofol and benzodiazepine intoxication, administered to help manage his chronic insomnia. His death highlighted the profound challenges he faced in managing his health while living under extraordinary pressures. The loss of Michael Jackson sparked an outpouring of grief and reflection. Fans, fellow artists, and the music industry mourned the passing of an icon whose influence transcended generations. At the same time, discussions about the toll of fame, the importance of mental health, and the need for compassionate care gained renewed attention. In many ways, Michael's final years serve as a poignant reminder of the human cost behind the glittering facade of stardom. They reveal a man striving to overcome physical pain and personal demons, holding on to his artistry and passion even as the weight of his struggles grew heavier. His legacy, while marked by unparalleled achievements, is also touched by the realities of vulnerability, a testament to the complexities of a life lived in the spotlight, where the brightest stars sometimes burn the hardest. The sudden passing of Michael Jackson on June 25, 2009, marked one of the most profound moments in modern music history. It was a shock that reverberated far beyond the boundaries of the entertainment world, touching millions across the globe who had grown up with his music, been inspired by his artistry, or simply admired the enigmatic figure behind the legend. News of his death spread like wildfire, transforming from disbelief to sorrow almost instantaneously. For many, it felt as though the heartbeat of pop culture had stopped. The king of pop, a man who had defined generations with his innovative sound and unforgettable performances, was gone, at just 50 years old. The circumstances surrounding his death were as complex as his life. medical investigations revealed that acute propofol intoxication, combined with other medications, led to cardiac arrest. His personal physician was later found guilty of involuntary manslaughter, bringing a somber close to the legal inquiry into Michael's final days. Public reaction was overwhelming and immediate. Fans around the world gathered at shrines, memorials, and concerts dedicated to his memory. Social media erupted with tributes, sharing of memories, and expressions of grief that united people across cultures and continents. It was a collective mourning unlike any other, a testament to Michael's universal impact. The funeral itself was a historic event, watched by millions worldwide. The ceremony reflected both the deep sorrow and the celebration of a life that had touched so many. Friends, family, and fellow artists spoke of his generosity, creativity, and the indelible mark he left on music and culture. Performances and tributes showcased the timelessness of his work and the emotional connection he fostered with audiences. In the days and weeks following his death, Michael Jackson's music soared back onto the charts, a bittersweet reminder of the artist's enduring legacy. Record sales, streaming numbers, and tribute events all paid homage to a career that had shaped the landscape of popular music in profound ways. Yet, beyond the public mourning, there was a deeper, more nuanced reflection on his life. Discussions about the pressures of fame, the challenges he faced, and the vulnerabilities behind the superstar's public persona became central themes. Fans and commentators alike wrestled with the complex legacy of a man who had given so much to the world, yet faced such profound personal struggles. The untimely death of Michael Jackson is remembered not only for its tragic suddenness but for the global outpouring of respect and love that followed. It was a moment that reminded the world of the fragile humanity behind the spectacle, and of the timeless power of music to unite, heal, and inspire, even in the face of loss. His passing left a void that continues to be felt, but it also solidified his place as a cultural icon whose influence will endure for generations to come. As the world continued to mourn the loss of Michael Jackson, the king of pop whose influence transcended generations and continents, the music landscape was quietly nurturing another remarkable talent, a young woman from North London, whose raw, soulful voice and deeply personal artistry would soon captivate millions. This was Amy Winehouse, a singer whose journey to global recognition was shaped by a rich musical heritage and an unyielding passion for authentic expression. Amy Jade Winehouse was born on September 14, 1983, in Southgate, a suburb of North London. She grew up surrounded by music. Her family was deeply entrenched in artistic pursuits. Her father, Mitch Winehouse, was a taxi driver with a love for jazz and blues, while her mother, Janice, was a pharmacist and homemaker who also appreciated the arts. From an early age, Amy was immersed in a household where the sounds of jazz legends like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan filled the air. This environment planted the seeds for her lifelong devotion to music. As a child, Amy showed an insatiable curiosity and a natural talent for singing. By the time she was just 10 years old, she was performing in local talent shows, her voice already hinting at the emotional depth and unique tone that would later become her signature. She attended the Sylvia Young Theatre School, a prestigious performing arts institution in London, where she honed her skills not only as a singer but also as a songwriter and performer. Amy's early musical influences were not limited to jazz alone. She was drawn to the raw honesty of soul and R&B artists such as Billie Holiday and Dinah Washington, and she admired contemporary acts like the brand new Heavies and Lauryn Hill. These diverse influences melded within her, creating a sound that was at once vintage and refreshingly modern. At the age of 16, Amy began to write songs that reflected her personal experiences. A fearless combination of youthful exuberance and poignant vulnerability. This authenticity would become one of her defining traits as an artist, setting her apart in a music industry often criticized for its manufactured acts. Her debut album, Frank, released in 2003, showcased her jazzy, soulful style and witty lyricism. While it received critical acclaim, it was clear that Amy was just beginning to carve out her place in the music world. But beneath the surface of growing success, Amy's life was already marked by the pressures and challenges that often accompany young stardom. In many ways, Amy Winehouse's story echoed the complex legacy left behind by icons like Michael Jackson, gifted artists whose extraordinary talents were intertwined with personal struggles. As the world's attention shifted from one legend to another, Amy was poised to emerge as a new voice, one that would speak with equal parts brilliance and heartbreak. Her journey from a North London girl with a dream to a global sensation was just beginning, a story defined not only by her musical roots but also by the fierce individuality that made her unforgettable. Before the world knew her name, before the Grammys, the headlines, or the iconic Beehive, there was just a teenage girl in North London with a voice too big for her age and a hunger to be heard. Amy Winehouse was never one to follow the script. While her classmates were studying for exams or planning for university, Amy was slipping out of the house late at night, chasing something different, something more alive. She found it in the smoky, dimly lit corners of London's jazz clubs, where the air was thick with bass lines and improvisation. Places like the Jazz Café in Camden or underground spots in Soho became her classrooms. And the legends, Billie Holiday, Dinah Washington, Thelonious Monk, were her teachers. She wasn't supposed to be there. She was too young. But Amy had a way of getting into places where rules didn't seem to apply. Her presence, magnetic even then, gave the impression that she belonged. And when she sang, there was no denying it. Even in those early years, people would stop and listen. Not just because of her voice, which was already rich with texture and emotion far beyond her years, but because of something deeper. Something raw. She didn't just sing the notes, she lived them. Every lyric, every phrase came with weight, like she was pulling it from a place inside herself that most people didn't dare explore. At home, her notebooks filled quickly. Pages of lyrics written in scrawled handwriting. Ideas jotted down during long bus rides. Melodies that came to her in quiet moments. Amy wasn't trying to write hits. She was trying to tell the truth. Her truth. And that meant her songs weren't always polished or pretty. They were honest. Gritty. Unapologetically her. She wrote about confusion, heartbreak, growing pains, and desire, all from the perspective of someone watching the world closely and questioning everything. While most pop stars were being carefully shaped by managers and labels, Amy resisted that kind of control from the beginning. She didn't want to be a product. She wanted to be a person. A real one. Her teachers and peers noticed the talent, but they also noticed the spark of rebellion. She didn't care much for rules or routine. She was brilliant in her music classes, but skeptical of the formal structure. She could spend hours perfecting a vocal take or dissecting a jazz standard, but might skip school the next day just to sit in a cafe and observe people's conversations, writing lyrics on napkins. Amy's first demos, rough and intimate, made their way into the hands of producers who were instantly captivated. Not because she fit any mold, but because she shattered them. There was nothing manufactured about her. From the way she dressed to the way she sang, Amy seemed to move in her own rhythm. And behind that rhythm was a quiet determination. She didn't want to sing someone else's words. She wanted to write her own. She didn't want to chase fame. She wanted to chase feeling. That core belief, that music should mean something, would guide her through every stage of her career, even when the spotlight grew too bright. In those early days, the world hadn't yet seen Amy Winehouse. But for those who caught a set in a tiny bar in Camden, or overheard her humming a melody on a city street, the message was clear. This was no ordinary voice. It was fierce, vulnerable, unfiltered. And it wasn't asking for permission. It was already telling its story. Long before Back to Black made her a household name, there was Frank, Amy Winehouse's debut album, released in 2003 when she was just 20 years old. It arrived quietly, without the fanfare of a global campaign or a chart-topping single. But for those who listened closely, Frank was more than an introduction. It was a confession. The title alone felt like a signal. Blunt, honest, and slightly ironic, a fitting reflection of Amy herself. She named it partially in homage to Frank Sinatra, whose charisma and musical storytelling she admired. But the deeper meaning was unmistakable. This was Amy, uncensored. Her thoughts, her humor, her contradictions, all laid bare across a collection of tracks that resisted easy labels. Musically, Frank was a melting pot: jazz, soul, hip-hop, and R&B woven together with clever arrangements and live instrumentation. It didn't sound like anything dominating the charts at the time. That was the point. Amy was carving her own space, guided not by trends but by instinct. Her voice, husky, expressive, and unguarded, wasn't polished to perfection. It was textured with real emotion, revealing the cracks as much as the beauty. Lyrically, she held nothing back. On tracks like Stronger Than Me, Amy delivered biting commentary on romantic frustration, challenging traditional gender roles with both wit and weariness. She didn't romanticize heartbreak, she dissected it. She questioned, criticized, and sometimes contradicted herself within the same verse. In You Sent Me Flying, vulnerability dripped through every syllable, while Take the Box transformed a breakup into a moment both poetic and painfully relatable. What set Frank apart wasn't just the skill, though Amy's vocal control and musicality were already remarkable. It was the intimacy. Listening to it felt like being let into her private journal. The album was playful and self-deprecating one moment, then raw and aching the next. It was filled with late-night thoughts, messy feelings, and the quiet battles we all carry. Critics were quick to praise the album's originality. They called her a rising star, a breath of fresh air in an industry too often obsessed with formula. But even within that praise, there was a sense that Amy was hard to place. Too soulful for pop, too modern for jazz, too candid for easy radio. She was something else. Something that didn't yet have a name. Behind the scenes, Amy was still figuring herself out. The sudden attention that came with the album brought pressure she didn't fully expect. She loved the creative process, the songwriting, the studio. But she often felt uncomfortable with the machinery of fame, the interviews, the appearances, the commercial expectations. From the beginning, she was skeptical of anyone trying to package her. She wasn't trying to be a product. She was telling her story. Frank didn't break sales records, not at first, but it quietly built a loyal following. It earned her prestigious award nominations, including a Mercury Prize nod and an Ivor Novello Award for songwriting. More importantly, it laid the emotional and artistic groundwork for everything that would follow. Looking back, Frank is more than a debut album. It's a time capsule. A moment when Amy Winehouse stepped into the world with no filter, no guardrails, and no desire to be anything other than exactly who she was. It captured a complex soul in motion. Sharp, yes. Conflicted, certainly. But brimming with honesty, and a voice that refused to be ignored. Amy Winehouse's true breakthrough arrived with her sophomore album, Back to Black, released in 2006. A record that would not only define her career but also leave an indelible mark on contemporary music. This album was a bold, unfiltered declaration of her artistic identity, blending vintage soul, jazz, and rhythm and blues into a sound that felt both timeless and refreshingly original. The making of Back to Black was a journey fueled by Amy's desire to return to the musical styles that had first inspired her, while also channeling deeply personal experiences. Collaborating closely with producer Mark Ronson, who shared her passion for the lush textures of 1960s Motown and girl groups, Amy crafted an album that was rich in emotional depth and sonic detail. The production featured moody strings, raw horn sections, and sparse but impactful percussion, all supporting her distinctive voice, a smoky contralto that conveyed vulnerability and strength in equal measure. What made Back to Black stand out was not just the sound, but the storytelling. Each song was a raw, honest exploration of love, heartbreak, regret, and resilience. Tracks like Rehab showcased Amy's sharp wit and candid self-awareness, tackling her struggles with addiction and public scrutiny with a mix of defiance and melancholy. You Know I'm No Good revealed a complicated self-image, mixing charm with self-sabotage, while the haunting title track, Back to Black, painted a vivid picture of sorrow and longing. The album's themes resonated with listeners worldwide, cutting through the gloss of mainstream pop with a sincerity that was rare and refreshing. Amy's willingness to expose her imperfections and pain, paired with the album's retro yet contemporary sound, made Back to Black a cultural phenomenon. Critics praised the album for its artistry and emotional honesty. It earned Amy 5 Grammy nominations, and she took home 5 awards in 2008, including Record of the Year and Song of the Year. The album's success catapulted her into global stardom, bringing her unique voice and style to millions. Back to Black also sparked a revival of interest in classic soul and jazz influences among a new generation of artists and fans. Amy's fearless blending of genres inspired musicians across the world to embrace authenticity and vintage aesthetics in fresh, modern ways. But beyond commercial success and critical acclaim, Back to Black was a deeply personal statement, a window into Amy's complex world, where beauty and pain coexisted, where vulnerability was strength, and where music became a lifeline. This album didn't just captivate the world, it cemented Amy Winehouse's place as one of the most distinctive and influential voices of her time, a legacy built on a sound that was truly her own. Amy Winehouse was a singular talent, a voice that immediately commanded attention not just for its unique sound but for the emotional truth it carried. Her vocal style was rich, expressive, and layered with raw intensity, a smoky contralto that could effortlessly shift from delicate whispers to powerful belts, capturing the full spectrum of human feeling. It was this voice that set her apart, but what made her truly unforgettable was how she used it to convey vulnerability in the most compelling way. Unlike many pop stars who rely on polished perfection, Amy's voice was raw and unfiltered, full of imperfections that only made it feel more genuine. She wasn't afraid to let her voice crack, to bend notes with bluesy inflections, or to layer her singing with soulful growls and sighs. This distinctive vocal quality brought a palpable sense of intimacy to her music, as if she were sharing her deepest secrets directly with each listener. But the voice alone was not the whole story. It was Amy's lyrics, deeply personal, confessional, and sometimes painfully honest, that gave her songs their extraordinary power. She wrote about love and loss with a candor that was both relatable and haunting, peeling back the layers of public persona to reveal a young woman grappling with heartache, addiction, and self-doubt. Every lyric felt like a page from her diary, filled with emotional nuance and raw honesty. Songs like "Love is a Losing Game" and "Tears Dry on Their Own" show Amy's poetic ability to articulate the bittersweet complexity of relationships, the hope, the pain, and the inevitable endings. Her words were never sugar-coated. Instead, they embraced the messiness of life and the contradictions of the human heart. This blend of raw vocal talent and emotional depth created a magnetic tension in her music. Listeners weren't just hearing notes and melodies. They were feeling stories, struggles, and truths unfolding in real time. Her performances were more than concerts. They were intimate confessions that invited empathy and connection. Critics often praised Amy for this unique combination. She was recognized as an artist who could bridge the gap between vintage soul and contemporary sensibilities, crafting songs that were timeless yet deeply personal. Her voice wasn't just about technical skill. It was about storytelling, about conveying the complexities of emotion with sincerity. This vulnerability also made Amy's journey resonate beyond music. She became a symbol of artistic courage, someone who laid bare her imperfections and pain for the world to see. While this openness endeared her to millions, it also exposed her to intense public scrutiny and pressure. A double-edged sword that would shape much of her life. In essence, Amy Winehouse's legacy is built on this remarkable intersection, a powerful, distinctive voice that could move mountains, paired with lyrics that expose the raw, unvarnished truths of her heart. It is this blend of talent and vulnerability that continues to captivate and inspire long after her voice was silenced. The dazzling spotlight of fame can often illuminate the brightest talents, but it can also cast the darkest shadows. For Amy Winehouse, the public eye was both a blessing and a curse. A place where her extraordinary gifts were celebrated but where her personal struggles were relentlessly exposed. As her star rose, so did the intensity of media scrutiny, creating a pressure cooker environment that tested her resilience at every turn. From the moment she burst onto the international stage, Amy found herself under an unforgiving microscope. Paparazzi cameras followed her every move, capturing not only her moments of triumph, but also her private battles. No detail was too small, no misstep too private to escape public view. The relentless attention was exhausting, invasive, and often cruel. The British tabloids, in particular, seemed obsessed with turning Amy's personal challenges into headlines. Stories about her relationships, her battles with substance use, and her emotional ups and downs became front-page news. The coverage was often sensationalized, blurring the line between genuine concern and exploitative gossip. This constant barrage took a toll on Amy's mental health and self-esteem, feeding a vicious cycle where public pressure and personal pain seemed to feed into each other. Yet Amy was more than just a tabloid target. She was a young woman grappling with very real issues. Fame amplified her struggles with addiction, making recovery a public spectacle rather than a private journey. The highs and lows of her life were no longer just her own. They became a collective drama for the world to watch unfold. Interviews and public appearances sometimes revealed a vulnerable side, with Amy occasionally opening up about the difficulties she faced behind the scenes. But other times, the scrutiny seemed to overwhelm her, leading to missed shows and cancellations that only fueled media speculation. The paparazzi presence was particularly invasive. Constantly followed and photographed in moments of distress, Amy's private pain was broadcast widely. This relentless exposure not only made it difficult to find peace but also fed into the negative narratives that surrounded her. Narratives that focused more on her troubles than her talents. Despite these challenges, Amy remained fiercely committed to her music. She continued to write and perform with the same raw honesty that had won her fans worldwide. However, the public's fascination with her struggles often overshadowed her artistry, making it harder for her to control her own story. The intense media spotlight also affected her personal relationships, adding strain to an already complicated life. Loved ones and friends were caught in the crossfire of public attention, making private support networks harder to maintain. In reflecting on Amy's experience, it becomes clear that fame is a double-edged sword. While it brought her unprecedented success and recognition, it also magnified her vulnerabilities and made the path to healing more complex. The story of Amy Winehouse is not just about a gifted artist, but also about the human cost of living under the glare of relentless public scrutiny. Ultimately, Amy's journey reminds us of the need for compassion and understanding in the way we view those in the spotlight, recognizing that behind the headlines is a person facing real struggles, deserving of privacy, support, and respect. Love, in its many forms, can be both a source of inspiration and a catalyst for turmoil. For Amy Winehouse, her relationships were deeply intertwined with her creative spirit, yet they also brought challenges that profoundly shaped her life and career. Among these, her relationship with Blake Fielder stands out as one of the most impactful, a connection marked by intense passion, emotional complexity, and public scrutiny. Amy met Blake in the early 2000s, and their bond was immediate and intense. Their relationship quickly became a focal point for media attention, capturing public fascination with its highs and lows. Together, they navigated the exhilarating rush of young love and the darker currents of personal struggle. Their dynamic was complex, filled with moments of genuine affection, creativity, and companionship, but also marred by conflict, codependency, and difficulties. Blake's influence on Amy's life and music was undeniable. He encouraged her artistic growth in some ways, sharing a world of music, art, and subculture that fueled her creativity. At the same time, their relationship became a whirlwind of emotional ups and downs, with challenges that impacted Amy's well-being and professional trajectory. The couple's struggles with substance use were well documented, and unfortunately, their mutual difficulties in this area compounded the pressures Amy faced. The relationship, while deeply personal, quickly became fodder for tabloids and gossip columns, where every dispute or reconciliation was magnified for public consumption. This relentless spotlight put additional strain on an already fragile situation. Their on-again, off-again romance was punctuated by legal troubles, public arguments, and moments of reconciliation, all played out under the unblinking eyes of the media. The intensity of their connection was evident, but so too were the challenges it presented. Blake's presence in Amy's life coincided with some of her most turbulent times, and many observers believe that this relationship was a key factor in both her struggles and her resilience. Despite the difficulties, Amy's experiences with love were reflected powerfully in her songwriting. Tracks from albums like Back to Black offer raw, unfiltered glimpses into the joys and heartbreaks she endured, with themes of longing, betrayal, and complicated emotions woven throughout. Her music became a canvas on which she expressed the depths of her feelings and the impact of her relationships. It's important to recognize that Amy's story is not simply one of hardship but also of profound human connection. Her relationships brought moments of joy and companionship, even as they challenged her. They remind us that behind the public persona was a woman seeking love, understanding, and stability in a world that often felt overwhelming. Ultimately, the love and turmoil in Amy Winehouse's life serve as a testament to the complexity of human relationships, how they can inspire greatness, but also present profound challenges. Her story encourages a compassionate perspective, understanding that the people behind the headlines experience a rich and often complicated emotional landscape. The story of Amy Winehouse is not only one of dazzling talent and unforgettable music, but also a deeply human tale of struggle and resilience. As her star continued to rise, Amy found herself confronting battles that extended far beyond the stage and studio. The decline she faced was marked by mounting health issues, legal troubles, and repeated attempts at recovery, a journey both painful and poignant. Amy's challenges with substance use became increasingly visible to the public and her loved ones. What began as occasional struggles gradually took a heavier toll on her physical and mental health. Reports of hospitalizations and health scares became more frequent, signaling a growing crisis that was difficult to contain. The pressures of fame, personal demons, and a demanding career created a perfect storm that tested her limits. Her health issues were often intertwined with her substance use. There were moments when Amy's condition caused concern not just among fans but within the industry and her inner circle. Despite these challenges, she demonstrated incredible strength by seeking help multiple times, entering rehabilitation programs in an effort to reclaim control over her life. However, recovery was far from a straightforward path. The nature of addiction and mental health struggles is complex and often nonlinear, and Amy's attempts at sobriety were marked by setbacks as well as hopeful progress. Each time she faced these hurdles, she showed a remarkable vulnerability and courage, laying bare her struggles even as she fought to overcome them. Legal problems also emerged during this period, adding layers of difficulty to an already complicated situation. These issues, ranging from minor charges to more serious allegations, brought additional public scrutiny and stress. Yet, despite these legal entanglements, Amy's spirit and dedication to her music never entirely faded. Throughout this tumultuous phase, the media's gaze remained relentless. Paparazzi and tabloids often capitalized on her struggles, sometimes overshadowing her artistic legacy with sensational headlines. The public's fascination with her personal battles was a double-edged sword, raising awareness of the toll fame can take but also complicating her path to healing. Behind the scenes, friends, family, and professionals rallied around Amy, offering support and intervention when possible. Their efforts reflected a genuine desire to help her find stability and peace, highlighting the deep love that surrounded her even amid adversity. Amy's story during these years is a reminder of the fragility behind fame and the courage required to face personal battles under the brightest spotlight. It invites us to approach her legacy with empathy and understanding, recognizing the human struggles that accompanied her extraordinary gifts. Her decline, though marked by hardship, also reveals a narrative of resilience, a testament to a woman who, despite immense challenges, sought to rise above them again and again. It is this enduring spirit that continues to resonate in the hearts of those who remember her. Amy Winehouse's story, while marked by profound tragedy, is ultimately one of enduring influence and cultural significance. Beyond the headlines and heartbreak, her legacy stands as a powerful testament to the transformative power of music and the lasting imprint of an artist who dared to be raw, real, and deeply human. Her distinctive voice, smoky, soulful, and instantly recognizable, reshaped the musical landscape. Amy bridged generations, fusing classic jazz and soul influences with contemporary sensibilities, creating a sound that was both timeless and refreshingly original. This blend not only captivated millions but also inspired a new wave of artists seeking authenticity and emotional depth in their work. Amy's breakthrough album, Back to Black, remains a milestone in modern music. It has been celebrated for its honest songwriting, rich arrangements, and emotional vulnerability. The album garnered numerous awards, including multiple Grammys, cementing her status as one of the most talented voices of her era. Even years after her passing, Back to Black continues to be discovered by new audiences, reaffirming its place in music history. Her influence extends beyond sound. Amy's unapologetic style, from her iconic beehive hairstyle to her bold tattoos and vintage fashion, left an indelible mark on popular culture. She challenged conventional beauty standards and helped pave the way for greater acceptance of individuality and self-expression. Many young artists and fans alike have cited Amy as a symbol of fearless authenticity. Posthumously, Amy Winehouse's impact has only deepened. Tributes from fellow musicians, documentaries, and biopics have kept her story alive, offering nuanced perspectives that celebrate her artistry while acknowledging her struggles. Charitable foundations and awareness campaigns inspired by her life have also contributed to greater understanding around addiction and mental health, encouraging compassion and support for those facing similar battles. Her story continues to resonate because it speaks to the complexities of human experience, the interplay of talent and vulnerability, triumph and tragedy. Amy's journey reminds us that behind every public persona is a real person, facing challenges that often go unseen. In reflecting on Amy's legacy, we recognize not only the loss but also the lasting gift she left behind, a body of work that moves hearts, a spirit that inspires authenticity, and a cultural imprint that refuses to fade. She remains a beacon for artists striving to express their truth and a poignant reminder of the importance of support and understanding in the world of fame. Amy Winehouse's life and music endure as a testament to the power of art to connect, heal, and transcend, proving that even beyond tragedy, a legacy can shine brightly for generations to come. As Amy Winehouse's soulful echoes slowly faded from the world stage, another voice was already stirring from a different corner of the music landscape, one that would come to define an entirely new generation. While Amy's music was rooted deeply in the rich traditions of jazz and soul, infused with raw emotional honesty, Kurt Cobain's story begins in the rugged suburbs of the Pacific Northwest, a world apart yet connected by a shared hunger for authenticity and expression. Kurt's early life was shaped by complexity and contradiction. Born in Aberdeen, Washington, he navigated a childhood marked by family struggles and a search for identity, a theme that would later resonate powerfully in his songwriting. From a young age, Kurt was drawn to music as a form of escape and self-discovery, experimenting with guitar riffs and lyrics that captured his inner turmoil and the frustrations of a generation searching for meaning. His rise with Nirvana was nothing short of revolutionary. Emerging in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Nirvana's raw, unpolished sound and Kurt's deeply personal, often haunting lyrics challenged the glam and excess that had dominated the previous decade's music scene. Grunge, as it came to be called, was more than a genre. It was a cultural movement that gave voice to disaffected youth and reshaped the mainstream. Kurt's songwriting was marked by an unmistakable blend of vulnerability and anger, mixing melodic hooks with lyrics that laid bare his struggles with mental health, fame, and societal expectations. Albums like Nevermind didn't just top charts. They became anthems for a generation seeking honesty amidst the noise. The connection between Amy and Kurt, though separated by style and geography, lies in this shared authenticity, the courage to expose inner demons through art. Both artists challenged norms, inspired millions, and left legacies that would ripple through music history long after their voices fell silent. As Amy's story reminds us of the power and peril of fame wrapped in raw talent, Kurt's emergence signals the next chapter, a generation's voice rising from the shadows, forever changing the soundscape and the soul of popular music. Before the anthems, before the chaos, before the world knew his name, there was Aberdeen. Tucked deep in the rainy forests of Washington state, the small logging town of Aberdeen was where Kurt Cobain spent his formative years. A place known for its gray skies, blue-collar grit, and quiet streets. It wasn't the kind of environment that nurtured dreams of global stardom. But for Kurt, it became the backdrop for a complicated emotional journey, one that would shape his voice, his vision, and eventually, his legacy. Kurt was born in 1967, into what initially seemed like a fairly typical American family. His early years were marked by energy, creativity, and a fascination with drawing. He filled sketchbooks with imaginative characters, odd little creatures, and expressive faces. Long before he ever picked up a guitar, he had already found a language of expression through art. But that early stability didn't last. At the age of 9, his parents divorced. A moment Kurt would later describe as a deep emotional rupture. The separation hit him hard. Not just because his family had changed, but because the world suddenly felt unstable. He bounced between homes, living with different relatives at different points, and never truly feeling rooted. That sense of being displaced, of not quite belonging, stayed with him. Aberdeen, for all its natural beauty, could be an unforgiving place for a sensitive, artistic soul. In school, Kurt struggled to find his place. He wasn't part of the athletic crowd. He didn't quite fit in with the preppy students or the more traditional groups. Instead, he found himself gravitating toward the fringes. Kids who listened to punk, who skated after class, who questioned authority and embraced nonconformity. That isolation became a crucible. Kurt's alienation didn't close him off, it lit a fire inside him. He spent hours alone, creating. Whether through drawing, writing, or experimenting with music, he was processing a world that didn't always make sense to him. The sadness, the frustration, the longing for connection, it all poured into his private notebooks and garage demos. He found early refuge in bands like the Melvins and Black Sabbath, whose raw, distorted sound spoke to his inner turmoil. Aberdeen didn't offer many music venues or artistic outlets, but Kurt found ways to immerse himself in underground culture, swapping cassette tapes, reading obscure zines, and soaking in every bit of outsider energy he could find. The louder, the weirder, the more defiant, the better. At the same time, Kurt wasn't just rebellious for the sake of it. There was a tenderness beneath the sarcasm, a search for meaning beneath the noise. He often spoke of wanting to be loved, to be understood, to find something real in a world that often felt fake. His friendships were deep and loyal, and his early journal entries revealed a remarkably introspective mind, one aware of his surroundings, critical of social norms, and constantly wrestling with big questions about identity, purpose, and art. He worked odd jobs, painted on the walls of his room, and played music whenever he could. Slowly, music began to take the lead. Not as a career, not yet, but as a form of therapy. When he played, something clicked. His emotions, which had once felt too heavy to hold, found a place to land. The seeds of discontent planted in Aberdeen weren't just personal, they were cultural. Kurt saw the hypocrisy in society, the way people were judged based on appearances, income, or popularity. He didn't just want to escape Aberdeen, he wanted to challenge everything it represented. By the time he began forming what would become Nirvana, Kurt already had a clear vision, not just to make music, but to speak a truth that others were afraid to say out loud. He wasn't interested in being polished or marketable. He wanted to be honest. And in that honesty he found his power. Aberdeen didn't break him. It built him. Quietly. Slowly. In rainy afternoons and lonely nights. In childhood drawings and garage recordings. In all the moments where he felt unseen, unheard, and out of place. That emotional undercurrent, that tension between vulnerability and rebellion, would later define his sound, his lyrics, and his presence on stage. But it all began here. In the quiet corners of a small town. With a boy, a broken heart, and a burning need to be understood. After years of drifting through the overcast landscapes of Aberdeen, Kurt Cobain found something he'd long been searching for, a sound. Not just a genre or a chord progression, but a true outlet for everything he had been carrying inside. And it began, quietly, in garages and small-town basements, far from the cameras, before the world knew what was coming. One of the earliest and most formative influences in Kurt's musical development was a local band called the Melvins. Sludgy, experimental, loud, they embodied everything Aberdeen wasn't supposed to be. And for Kurt, they weren't just a band. They were a gateway. The Melvins were close by, geographically and personally. Their rehearsal space was accessible, their members approachable, and Kurt would often watch them practice, absorbing their raw energy like a sponge. It wasn't just the sound, it was the attitude. The Melvins introduced him to a community where being different wasn't just accepted, it was celebrated. They showed him that music didn't need to be clean or polite to be meaningful. It could be distorted, rough around the edges, as long as it was real. That ethos stayed with him. Around this time, Kurt began connecting with other local musicians, one of the most important being Chris Novoselic, a tall, quiet, and equally curious young man with a love for punk. The two clicked almost instantly, bonded by a shared love of the Stooges, Led Zeppelin, and obscure underground bands. Together, they began to rehearse in makeshift spaces, attics, garages, anywhere they could plug in an amp and be left alone. They didn't start as Nirvana. The band went through several names, lineups, and styles. At first, it was trial and error, testing sounds, recording rough demos on cheap equipment, playing small shows in community halls and dive bars. But slowly, something began to emerge. A voice, a tone, a presence. Gritty but melodic. Honest but haunting. This was the late 1980s, and the Seattle music scene was starting to shift. While the rest of the country was immersed in glam rock and pop ballads, the Pacific Northwest was simmering with something entirely different. A sound that was heavy, unfiltered, and emotionally charged. It didn't yet have a name, but it was about to. Kurt and Chris eventually crossed paths with Sub Pop, a small but fiercely influential independent record label based in Seattle. Sub Pop had a nose for unique talent and a deep commitment to promoting raw, authentic music. They saw in Nirvana, which was finally settling into its name, a spark that couldn't be ignored. In 1989, Nirvana released their debut album, Bleach. Under Sub Pop, recorded on a shoestring budget, it was filled with heavy guitars, aggressive vocals, and lyrics that were equal parts poetic and painful. It didn't sell millions, not yet, but it made an impression. It was a stake in the ground. A declaration of intent. And more importantly, it gave Kurt something he never truly had before, a platform. Through Nirvana, he was finally able to turn his personal chaos into art. The anger, the loneliness, the yearning, all of it now had form, rhythm, and volume. Their shows, though small, were electric. There was something magnetic about Kurt's presence. He wasn't trying to be a star. He just showed up, raw and real, and audiences felt it. The band's sound evolved quickly. It was influenced by punk but wasn't quite punk. It borrowed from metal but resisted its theatrics. It had elements of classic rock, but stripped down and smudged. It was, in a word, grunge, a term that would soon come to define not only their music but an entire cultural moment. During this time, drummer Chad Channing played an important role, helping to shape the early rhythm of Nirvana. But the lineup still didn't feel complete. That would come soon, with a drummer named Dave Grohl, whose entry would add the final force to the sound they had been building. But even before Grohl's arrival, it was clear that Nirvana had found its voice, a perfect storm of disillusionment, melody, distortion, and truth. This wasn't just about music anymore. It was about a movement. And at its center was Kurt. Not a polished pop star or a manufactured icon, but a deeply human artist who had taken everything that once made him feel like an outsider and transformed it into something unforgettable. The journey from Aberdeen's grey silence to the echoing amplifiers of Seattle was complete. And the world was about to listen. The grunge explosion was nothing short of seismic, a musical and cultural upheaval that shook the foundations of the early 90s and catapulted Kurt Cobain and Nirvana into the global spotlight. At the heart of this revolution was a song that would become an anthem not just for a generation, but for anyone feeling disillusioned, restless, or searching for identity. Smells Like Teen Spirit. Released in 1991 as the lead single from Nirvana's album Nevermind, Smells Like Teen Spirit was a perfect storm of raw energy, infectious melody, and enigmatic lyrics. The song's driving guitar riffs, pounding drums, and Kurt's haunting vocals captured a spirit of rebellion wrapped in vulnerability. It was grunge distilled into its purest form. Both accessible and challenging, an anthem for youth who felt unheard. The music video, with its dark gymnasium setting, chaotic crowd, and a riotous energy that seemed to pulse through the screen, became a cultural phenomenon. It was played endlessly on MTV, turning Nirvana from underground heroes into household names almost overnight. Suddenly, a sound that had been bubbling up from the Seattle underground scene exploded onto the mainstream stage, shifting the musical landscape away from the polished excess of 80s glam rock and pop. But Smells Like Teen Spirit was more than just a hit song. It was a symbol of a broader cultural shift. It gave voice to the disaffected and disillusioned, a generation grappling with economic uncertainty, social change, and a desire for authenticity. The angst and rawness of grunge resonated deeply with young people who saw their own frustrations and hopes reflected in Kurt's voice. This explosion also challenged the music industry itself. Major labels scrambled to sign grunge bands, while alternative music became a dominant force in radio and media. Nirvana's success opened doors for other Seattle acts like Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains, cementing the city's place on the musical map. Yet beneath the commercial success lay the complex reality for Kurt Cobain. While Smells Like Teen Spirit brought unprecedented fame, it also amplified the pressures and scrutiny he faced. The song's overwhelming popularity sometimes clashed with Kurt's own ambivalence about stardom and the music business, adding another layer to his story. Nonetheless, the cultural impact of Smells Like Teen Spirit remains undeniable. It shifted the tone of popular music, inspired countless artists, and became a defining moment not just for Nirvana, but for the 1990s as a whole. In many ways, it marked the sound of a generation's awakening, raw, rebellious, and deeply human. The burden of fame is often spoken about in hushed tones, as if it's a secret price paid by those who reach the highest peaks of success. For Kurt Cobain, the intense spotlight that followed the explosive success of Nirvana was both a blessing and a heavy weight, a burden that slowly began to shape his life in profound ways. As the face of a generation and the unexpected spokesperson of the grunge movement, Kurt found himself thrust into a world he never fully sought. The pressures of constant public scrutiny, relentless media attention, and overwhelming expectations took a toll on his sense of self. What once felt like freedom through music began to feel more like imprisonment. Alienation became a constant companion. Despite the millions of fans who admired him, Kurt often expressed feelings of isolation and detachment. The very fame that elevated him seemed to create barriers, making genuine connection difficult. His introspective nature and sensitivity clashed with the demands of stardom, leaving him caught in a complex emotional struggle. Alongside this alienation came the creeping shadow of addiction. Like many artists who grapple with sudden fame, Kurt struggled with substance use as a way to cope with pain, anxiety, and the overwhelming weight of his public life. The pressures of touring, media appearances, and the demands of sustaining success only deepened these struggles. Kurt's battles with addiction were intertwined with his ongoing inner conflicts, questions about identity, artistic integrity, and the cost of fame. He wrestled with the tension between maintaining his authentic voice and navigating a music industry that often demanded commercialization and compromise. This inner turmoil was not hidden from the world. Interviews, personal writings, and the raw vulnerability in his music revealed a man trying to reconcile immense talent with deep personal pain. His struggles resonated with many who saw in him both the brilliance of creativity and the fragility of human nature. At times, the burden of fame seemed to overshadow Kurt's achievements. The expectations to be a role model, a cultural icon, and a musical innovator were heavy, and the toll on his mental and emotional health was undeniable. The contrast between the public's adoration and his private battles created a poignant, often painful dichotomy. Yet, even amidst these challenges, Kurt Cobain's artistry continued to speak volumes. His ability to channel pain into music that touched millions remains a testament to his enduring legacy. But the burden he carried reminds us that fame, while dazzling on the surface, can come with profound costs beneath the spotlight. The relationship between Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love was one of the most intense, complex, and closely watched romances in rock history, a story woven with threads of love, chaos, passion, and public scrutiny. Their connection was as magnetic as it was tumultuous, marked by deep affection yet shadowed by personal struggles that often played out on a very public stage. From the moment they met, there was an undeniable chemistry. Both were powerful artistic forces, Kurt, the shy yet intense voice of a generation, and Courtney, a fierce and unapologetic musician and actress. Their bond was rooted in a shared understanding of life's darker edges, as well as a mutual passion for music and creative expression. Yet, their love story was far from simple. The pressures of fame and their individual battles with addiction added layers of complexity to their relationship. Courtney's own struggles with substance use and her fiery personality often clashed with Kurt's introspective nature and sensitivity. Together, they navigated a turbulent landscape, where moments of tenderness were frequently interrupted by conflict. Their marriage, while deeply loving in many respects, was also marked by volatility. Media attention turned their private lives into public spectacle, with tabloids eagerly capturing every argument and reconciliation. This relentless spotlight magnified their challenges and made it difficult for them to find peace away from prying eyes. Despite these difficulties, there was a profound commitment between them. Courtney was by Kurt's side during his most vulnerable moments, offering support even as their lives spun out of control. They became each other's muses, influencing not only their music but also the way they saw the world. Their relationship also sparked debates and speculation about the influence they had on each other, the impact of their struggles, and the role they played in each other's downfalls and triumphs. But beyond the headlines, the core of their story was undeniably human. Two flawed individuals seeking connection, love, and meaning amid chaos. Ultimately, the relationship between Kurt Cobain and Courtney Love stands as a powerful reminder of the complexities behind celebrity romances, where passion and pain often walk hand in hand, and where love can be both a source of inspiration and a reflection of inner turmoil. Artistic struggles and public pressure often go hand in hand, especially for someone like Kurt Cobain, whose raw talent and groundbreaking work placed him at the center of a cultural storm. While Nirvana's meteoric rise brought unprecedented fame and influence, it also unleashed a torrent of expectations and challenges that weighed heavily on Kurt's creative spirit. From the outset, Kurt was a fiercely independent artist, driven by a desire to express authentic emotion rather than conform to commercial demands. However, success brought its own kind of pressure, the demand to replicate the magic of previous albums, to stay relevant, and to satisfy an ever-growing and increasingly scrutinizing fanbase. This expectation sometimes felt like a cage, limiting the freedom that Kurt so deeply valued. The tension between artistic integrity and public expectation became a persistent source of struggle. Kurt was famously uncomfortable with the celebrity status that accompanied Nirvana's success. He often expressed frustration with the media's portrayal of him, which he felt misrepresented his intentions and distorted his art. This disconnect between his personal vision and public perception created a sense of alienation that seeped into his music and personal life. Kurt's songwriting reflected these inner battles, a blend of vulnerability, anger, and a quest for meaning. Yet, as the spotlight grew brighter, so did the scrutiny over every creative choice he made. Critics and fans dissected each new release, placing immense pressure on him to deliver not just songs, but statements that resonated on multiple levels. Moreover, the music industry's commercial machinery clashed with Kurt's ethos. The relentless cycle of touring, promotion, and media appearances often left little room for genuine creative exploration or rest. The exhaustion from this constant pressure took a toll, sometimes stifling his inspiration or fueling his frustrations. Despite these challenges, Kurt's artistic struggle was also a catalyst for innovation. His willingness to confront uncomfortable truths and channel his pain into his work gave birth to music that was both deeply personal and universally impactful. This duality, of conflict and creativity, defined much of his career. Public pressure, while daunting, underscored the profound connection Kurt's music had with listeners. His art became a mirror reflecting the complexities of youth, pain, and rebellion, resonating with those who felt misunderstood or marginalized. Yet, this connection came at a cost, as the weight of expectations sometimes overshadowed the joy of creation. In the end, Kurt Cobain's journey through artistic struggles and public pressure paints a portrait of a man striving to maintain his authenticity in the face of overwhelming demands, a battle that is as timeless as it is tragic. The final days of Kurt Cobain's life are often viewed through a lens of profound sadness and reflection, a complex mix of isolation, struggle, and the tragic culmination of battles fought largely out of the public eye. As the pressure of fame weighed heavier and personal demons grew more insistent, Kurt's world began to shrink, retreating from the bright lights of the stage to a place marked by solitude and inner turmoil. In those closing months, Kurt's isolation was palpable. Friends and family noticed a growing distance, as if the man who once gave voice to a generation was retreating into a private world of pain and uncertainty. The relentless scrutiny and expectations had taken their toll, leading him to withdraw from social circles and public appearances alike. Despite moments of seeking help and attempting recovery, Kurt's struggles with mental health and addiction cast long shadows. His vulnerabilities were magnified by the intense media attention, which often blurred the lines between concern and invasion of privacy. The narrative surrounding him became one of tragedy waiting to unfold. In this period, Kurt's creative output slowed, and he wrestled with the question of identity, who he was beyond the fame and the music. Reports from those close to him describe a man caught between hope and despair, clinging to moments of clarity amid the chaos. The tragic end came swiftly, leaving the world stunned and grieving. Kurt Cobain passed away at the young age of 27, a loss that resonated deeply across the music industry and with fans worldwide. His death was not just the end of a life, but the closing chapter of a cultural moment that had redefined an era. What followed was an outpouring of mourning and tribute, a recognition of a talent that had burned intensely, if briefly. The legacy left behind is one of brilliance tinged with sorrow, a reminder of the fragility behind even the most luminous stars. Kurt's final days, marked by isolation and struggle, invite us to reflect on the cost of fame, the challenges of mental health, and the importance of compassion. They remind us that behind every public figure lies a human story, complex and deserving of understanding, Kurt Cobain's impact on music and culture extends far beyond the notes he played and the lyrics he penned. He emerged as more than just a rock star. He became an icon for an entire generation, a symbol of rebellion, authenticity, and the complexities of youth navigating a changing world. His voice, raw and unapologetic, echoed the frustrations and hopes of millions, capturing the spirit of the early 1990s in a way few artists ever have. The lasting influence of Kurt Cobain is seen in how grunge music shaped the musical landscape, inspiring countless bands and artists who sought to emulate that gritty, emotional honesty. Nirvana's success opened doors for alternative music to enter the mainstream, forever altering the industry's dynamics and broadening what popular music could sound like. Yet, Cobain's legacy is not only about sound, it's about attitude, vulnerability, and the courage to be different. Beyond his artistic contributions, Kurt's story became part of a larger cultural mythology. The tortured artist archetype, so often romanticized, found a tragic embodiment in his life. His struggles with fame, mental health, and identity resonated deeply, prompting conversations about the pressures placed on young talents and the need for mental health awareness in the entertainment world. Cobain's image, his flannel shirts, unkempt hair, and fierce gaze, became emblematic of a generation that valued sincerity over spectacle, expression over perfection. This image, both powerful and haunting, continues to influence fashion, art, and popular culture decades after his passing. Moreover, the mythos around Kurt Cobain invites ongoing exploration and reinterpretation. Fans and scholars alike dissect his lyrics, interviews, and performances for insight, finding layers of meaning that speak to universal themes of pain, hope, and resistance. Documentaries, books, and tributes keep his memory alive, ensuring that new generations discover the man behind the music. In many ways, Kurt Cobain's enduring legacy is a testament to the profound connection music can forge. A connection that transcends time and circumstance. His life and work remind us of the power of art to give voice to the voiceless and to challenge the status quo. Ultimately, Kurt Cobain remains a cultural touchstone, a figure whose influence will continue to ripple through music, art, and the hearts of those who find solace and strength in his story. And so, we come to the close of a story that spans decades, voices, and hearts. Michael, Amy, and Kurt, three souls who sang for the world, touched millions, and yet, in the end, faced their own battles in solitude. Their lives were marked by brilliance and brilliance's cost, their legacies woven into the fabric of music and culture forever. As we reflect on their journeys, we remember not just the fame or the struggles, but the humanity beneath it all, the passion, the pain, and the profound impact they left behind. Their stories remind us how fragile greatness can be, and how the light that shines so brightly sometimes casts the deepest shadows. Thank you for joining me tonight, for sharing in this intimate journey through the lives of these unforgettable artists. May their voices continue to echo in your heart, inspiring and reminding us all of the power of music and the complexity of the human spirit. Rest well, and good night.